Thank you all so much for coming. There's so many friendly, nice, supportive faces in the audience, and it makes such a difference. I really, really appreciate it. It means the world. So thank you so much for coming on such a bright day as well. And you've come and sat in the dark with me. So thank you very much for that. I'm thinking that I'm going to talk about three main projects. A project that I finished shortly before coming here, which kind of grounds a lot of my research and my ideas and my thinking that I've been doing while I've been on the residency, and I'm going to talk about a project that's in progress, and I'll talk about a work that I finished which is downstairs, and it's a work which should be viewed in the dark. So if you guys want to stay around until 8 o'clock, which is when I'm going to open my studio up, you're more than welcome to come down and see my studio and see this work specifically. It has to be viewed in the dark. And it will all make a lot more sense in a bit. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was a project that I worked on. It was a really unusual and exciting project in Basel, in Switzerland. Basically, I was invited to work on an art ghost train. So I don't know if you guys, surely you're familiar with ghost trains. It's like they're rides, you get them at seaside resorts and fairgrounds, and you sit in a cart and then you go along a track and then spooky things pop out at you, left, right and centre. And basically I was invited by a gallery called Museum Tanguy to work on this art ghost train, to devise half of the scary moments that were going to happen along the track of the rides. So I was working with a Swiss artist called Augustin Rebeté, and the pair of us came up with all the spooky moments. So this was the facade of the ride. This is the scale of the ride. So this was an aerial shot that I saw recently, and it gives you a sense of context. So the gallery / museum is down here, and then the River Rhine is here, and then this is a park out the back of the gallery with a public footpath that goes past it. So the project was to celebrate the 100th birthday of an artist called John Tanguy, who some of you may be aware of, some of you may not have heard of him before, but he was a kinetic sculptor. So he was an artist who was making big, moving installations and sculptures, nonsense machines. And I'm a big fan of his work because I'm really interested in nonsense and absurdity, and so was he. So I was a big fan of his work. So when I was invited to work on this project, I just was super excited. And it was for his 100th birthday. So he's dead now, but it was his 100th birthday. And this is a work by Tanguy, John Tanguy. This is in Museum Tanguy. So as you can see, it's got all these mechanical elements that sort of, they move and they rotate and they make lots of sort of bang, crash, wallop noises. Very exciting, very physical experience. So to celebrate his birthday, the gallery commissioned myself and Augustin to make a ghost train. And we had a big birthday party for it. This was on the 22nd of May. This is a sculpture by Tanguy's partner, who was Niki de Saint-Phal. Some of you may be aware of her work. She was an amazing artist, especially known for her Nana sculptures. So these are big, voluptuous women. And they were a couple, so there's a permanent sculpture by her there, and then our ghost train was next to that. And one of the things that was really important to Tanguy was that his work would be accessible to multiple sort of different audiences, so members of the public could enjoy it, children could enjoy it, elderly people could enjoy it, that there wouldn't be a sense of like, oh, this is just for the art world. But the project was open during Art Basel, so there was a sort of big art world audience that went to it as well. So it was really interesting to see the different ways that people interacted with it. And I'll just show you some more pictures from the opening. So it was well received, which was nice. There was a nice big long queue of people along the footpath, which is good to see. We gave everyone fake moustaches. I wish I'd put more pictures of that in the slideshow, but we all had to wear these fake moustaches because Tanguy had a very big bushy moustache. This is a sculpture by Tanguy. So this is the back of the ride, and then this is a big queue of people, which I was really chuffed to see. And then this gives you a sense of scale as well. So this was one of the presidents of Switzerland who came along, which really surprised me. I didn't actually know who he was until afterwards, I'll be honest, but he came and he started off, he was very sort of like formal, as you would expect from a president, and then coming out of the ride at the end, you can see he's completely sort of disarmed and like sort of reminds me like a childlike version of himself, if it makes any sense. And this was probably my favourite thing from this project, was the way that the ghost train was able to do this to people. So I had like museum directors, curators, collectors, all different sorts of people from different statuses going on the ride, and then at the end of the ride they'd all emerge looking like, oh my god, what have I just experienced? What was that last couple of minutes of my life? So I put this in because I think it just represents for me, this project in a lot of ways represents that for me. And this was the original ride. So the ride itself was from 1937, and it's called the Vienna Prater Geisterbahn, which this is the name of the original ghost train. And it's kind of beloved in Basel, so people were really attached to it. It's been going for a lot of years in Basel. It's installed at the Autumn Fair, or the Autumn Carnival, sorry. And as you can see, it's a two-storey ride. I actually love the original facade, but obviously we wanted to sort of do something a bit different with it for the art project. But you can see this was sort of the original design of it, which I'm pretty sure this is literally the one that's nearly 100 years old now. This is people, again, the original images. So I turned up to a warehouse in Switzerland, and this is what I was presented with, and I thought, oh my god, what am I going to do with this? It felt like a really monumental and exciting project, but also quite daunting to come up with half of the scary moments to happen along the track of a ghost train. But also super exciting, like with my work and what I'm interested in and what I'd been thinking about previously, it just felt like an incredible thing to kind of wrap my head around and throw myself at. And so you might be wondering, why a ghost train? Why specifically a ghost train? And so for the opening of the Centre Pompidou in Paris in 1977, Tanguy, Niki de Saint-Phal, and then two other artists worked on something called the Crocodrome, which was a giant crocodile installation for the opening of the gallery. And in the stomach of the crocodile, Tanguy proposed to put a ghost train in the middle. And you can see they're kind of in the shape of these fish or these whales or these, I'm not sure what they were exactly, but those were the carts. So people would sit in those and then go along a track inside the stomach of the beast. And then Niki de Saint-Phal designed that bit, which is these jaws that open and close. And I think this was a leg made out of chocolate. So it was a really surreal kind of bonkers installation. And it really happened. So this is a photo of the Crocodrome in progress at the opening of the Centre Pompidou. So it gives you a sense of scale. This is the head of the crocodile. And then the ghost train, I think these are some steps leading into the ghost train that was in the process of being built there. And then there's people over here, obviously, to give a sense of scale. So it was really exciting to work within the context of this amazing project, and for them to think about the ghost train as a form that could be reactivated for Tanguy's 100th birthday. And it was a huge honour to be invited to work on it. So sorry to bring you into a dark room and talk about death, but I think it's an important thing to talk about his relationship to death in his work, how he processed it, how he thought about it, and how it manifested in his pieces. So one thing that I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about, but I will talk about it, is that I've had a lot of bereavement over the last year. I've lost 3 family members, very sadly. I think that it was really strange to be working on a ghost train whilst grieving, because while you're thinking about death and ghosts, to then be working on a large-scale commission where you're thinking about death and ghosts is a really strange sort of, I swear the universe works in weird ways sometimes. But the way that Tanguy thought about death actually really helped me to process my own grief, and then also to make work from it, which was really important. Anyway, so Tanguy, I won't read out the whole thing, but Tanguy had this really great idea, this really great phrase, ludic macabreness or macabre ludicrousness. So the word ludic means playful. So he said that portrayals of death should be playful, and he drew inspiration from the Dance of Death mural, which is from the 1400s in Basel, and it looks like this. Oh, that's fairly clear actually, I'm quite pleased. So basically in the Dance of Death mural from the 1400s in Basel, I think it was painted on a church wall, if I remember correctly, but you have skeletons leading people of different social statuses to their deaths. And they're all wearing silly hats as well. I don't know why this is the thing, but the skeletons are all leading people like paupers, princes, farmers to their deaths, and it's all about this idea that death comes for us all regardless of social status. So Tangley was very interested in this idea of playful approaches to think about death whilst also taking it seriously at the same time. So this idea of playing a game, a dance of death with death, playing with it in the style of joke articles. And this was something that really helped me personally, but then also with the work too. So then I came up with this idea to have a wall of 120 skulls, and each one has a party blower in its mouth. So as the cart goes around the corner of the ghost train, all these blowers go off at once. So it goes like poof. And I was thinking architecturally about using low budget props. So my background is in performance and video. I use a lot of low budget props. I'm quite interested in slapstick comedy as well. And I was thinking about how these things could become architectural. And I was thinking about sort of sites of death, scenes of death. And I thought of the Parisian catacombs and how you have these skulls that, you know, are floor to ceiling. And I took inspiration from that. So I worked with an electronics specialist to make this piece. This is it from the front. So it's quite startling, to say the least, when they all go off in your face at once. It's quite a loud noise. But yeah, I was pretty pleased with this piece. And I think once I thought about bringing together birthdays and death, or celebrations and death, because also working within the context of it's his birthday, but he's a deceased artist. So what does it mean to make work now and to, you know, to do this project? To continue this theme, I made a work which featured a jelly on a seance table. So if you can imagine, you know in films when they're doing like they're connecting with the dead and they all sit around a table and they put their hands together like this. I was thinking about, well, what if when the table's wobbling, if that made the jelly wobble as well? So again, as the cart went past and it was motion activated, this giant jelly, so these are life size, these hands, these are casts of my friend's hands. The jelly started wobbling, and that's when it's not wobbling, it looks like that. So the jelly was quite big, it was probably about that tall, about that wide. And then I had a 2.6 metre birthday cake, so you can't really get a sense of scale in this picture, but it was really, really, really tall. And then as the cart went past, so your eye level would be about there, the cake sort of leant forward as if you were going to get squashed by it. And I was thinking about it being a really ironic death, like to be squashed by a birthday cake. Of all the ways to go, that just felt like a really silly way to die. Upstairs on the right, so the way that we structured it was I had the first chapter, then Augustin had the second chapter, I had the third chapter on the top floor, and then he had the final chapter going back out to the exit. On the top floor, I had this idea of 7 severed heads from famous paintings. So there's a few Caravaggio paintings there, and they would be singing the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. So I got my friends, I recorded us, I did the voice of Medusa, and then a few of my friends sang the Bee Gees Staying Alive, but in like a really deadpan way, like, ha, 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 staying alive. You know, not sort of like high-pitched, but just really sort of deadpan and matter-of-fact. So as the cart went through, there was this parade of severed heads, and their jaws would move up and down, and they sang Bee Gees Staying Alive, that famous sort of phrase. And then this is a close-up of the heads. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping through. And then I had a tunnel of Swiss cheese. This is getting weirder, this talk by the second. I had a tunnel of Swiss cheese, and then through the holes, there were these horrible objects. So this was a really confined space on the top floor, and the ceiling was really low. So as you went through in the cart, all these horrible things were kind of like brushing you in the face and tapping you on the arm. It was a very sort of physical encounter. And I had a strobe lighting in there. So, you know that it pulses really quickly. So you get these flashes of horrible things coming at you in the dark. I was quite pleased with that one. It was quite, it was quite scary. It was quite horrible. Like, especially the spider legs. They were really, you know, very, very visceral experience. And then after emerging from the tunnel of severed heads, sorry, some of the sentences I'm saying are great. So after you emerged from the tunnel of severed heads, there was a bloody curtain that the heads were poking through. And then I was thinking, you know, when kids are like dressing up for Halloween or something, that gag of using ketchup to mimic blood. I thought that after you go through the doors, you've gone through the tunnel of severed heads, you go through these doors, and then it's revealed that all along it was just ketchup. So just some really simple gags in there as well. And on the back of the ride, I put these dancing skeletons. So this meant a lot to me to be able to do this. So I'm from Essex. I should have said that at the beginning. I'm from Essex. And this is a ride from Southend from the 1950s. It's called Laugh in the Dark, which feels like quite a poetic, for me, it felt like a very poetic sort of philosophy or something when I was going through some really difficult times over the last year. The ability to laugh in the dark, I think, is a very powerful thing to be able to do. And so I really wanted to bring these skeletons to the ghost train in Basel. And I think that Essex and Basel don't usually meet. It's quite an unusual mix. And I just felt really proud to have been able to bring an element of Essex into this, with this Laugh in the Dark, the dancing skeleton. So that was on the back of the ride. Augustin did the front of the ride and I did the back. Anyway, so that's the ghost train, and I feel like it was important to talk about this because it opened on the 22nd of May and it closed on the 21st of September, so really recently. And so all the time that I've been here, I've had this project going on in Switzerland and I've been getting updates about it. And when it opened, I pretty much immediately came here straight afterwards. So I was really in like a ghost train frame of mind where it had been a really high pressure environment to work in, like super fast paced, and the scale of it as well was so monumental. And so I was really in this kind of frame of mind. And also my studio was painted black, so I painted it black to commit to the task. And I wanted, because obviously if you're making work in the dark, you need to be able to see it in the dark. So in my studio back in Essex, I painted the walls black, and then I sat on a chair on wheels and got my friends to push me up and down the studio so that I could get an experience of what it was like on the ghost train. So to go from that to Porthmeor, which could not be more different. I can literally feel the light coming from this screen now. It could not be more different from everything that I'd experienced over the last year. And it's been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful in so many ways that I'm really looking forward to sharing now with the rest of the presentation. So I came here at the beginning of July. It was very bright. I felt like I literally went from black to white. It was really stark, the difference. And I didn't have a specific proposal for works that I wanted to make. I sort of came here with a very open mind. I hadn't been to Cornwall before for a prolonged period of time. So I was really open to what I was going to experience. I didn't know what to expect. And I'll be open with you guys about what I said when I was nominated for this and when I was selected for it. You were asked to give a couple of sentences about what you would do if you were offered the studio. And I said that I want to come here to process what it's like to work, what it's been like to work on a ghost train whilst also processing bereavement. So I think that I was offered the opportunity because it's a perfect place to be able to do that. And I feel very grateful to have had that opportunity to do that. So I came here, I entered this really bright space. It was St Ives in the peak of summer, so you've got all these tourists on the beach. It's very lively, it's very energetic, and it took me a while to adjust to it, I'll be completely honest. Because also, so I didn't go abroad on holiday growing up. We used to just go to different seaside resorts around the coast of the UK. And I'm very familiar with like tacky sea sort of culture, you know, seaside culture. So inflatables and amusements and 2p machines and everything that's really sort of like tacky and abrasive about seaside resorts. I grew up close to Southend in Essex, so this is what I'm familiar with. And when I came to St Ives, you guys don't have that here really at all. You've got the amusements, there's like a sort of cave where you can go in, and there's the hillbillies thing, and there's a few arcade machines, but it's a very different sort of coastal location. So I really found that interesting because I thought, wow, I've not been to, I know it's not a seaside resort specifically, it's more of a harbour, and it's a working harbour, so it has a different sort of purpose or a different identity to other places that I've been to around the coast of the UK. But I've put this in just because I remember just coming here and thinking, wow, like this is it's a different experience to what I'm used to, and I'm really interested and excited to understand Cornwall and understand St Ives. I went to lots of local museums, and I love this museum so much. Have you guys been to it? You must have been to it. Please tell me you've all gone to this, because if you haven't, you must. It's such a cool local resource. It's really quirky, it's got some really unusual curatorial decisions. So one thing that I really enjoyed was looking at displays like this, where they'd have this array of interesting objects, and then they would say something like, "We don't know what these things are, but if you know, can you tell us?" And I thought that was such a nice way to approach museum displays, because rather than being a sort of, rather than being an authority, instead that they were sort of opening up a conversation. And I really like local museums wherever I go for this reason, because I always feel like the community, you discover a lot of narratives that are maybe not the dominant narratives, or these kind of secret narratives that it's more about sort of stories being told. And there's always a slight sort of questionable feeling of, am I looking at something that's factually correct, but does it even matter, to be honest? And I came across, not in the St Ives Museum, but I came across, in my research, coffin lid surfboards, which I thought was a really poetic and unusual discovery. So some of the earliest surfers in Cornwall surfed on coffin lid surfboards, which were made by a local undertaker, whose name I've got written down here, Tom Tremewen. He was a local undertaker in the 1920s, and some of the earliest surfboards used in Cornwall were made from the lids of coffins. So the local undertaker actually provided some of the earliest surfboards in Cornwall, and I thought that was quite absurd and interesting. So here's some people surfing on coffin lid surfboards. And I went to, which museum was this? I've basically been to every museum in the near vicinity, and I get confused as to which one was which. I think this was one in Falmouth, the Maritime Museum in Falmouth. And they actually had one of the coffin lid surfboards. I also went in a helicopter, that's me, I went in a helicopter to Tresco. You can see I'm really excited to get in the helicopter. To Tresco, which is one of the Isles of Scilly. So on Tresco, which is a privately owned island, it's kind of a big luxury resort really. It's a privately owned island which is about 28 miles away from the coast of Cornwall. There is a garden called Abbey Gardens. Has anyone been to Abbey Gardens? Is anyone familiar with this? Yeah. No? Excellent, I can tell you all about it. So I went to Abbey Gardens on the Isle of Tresco, and it's stunning, but then also it's, I would say, very representative of a very colonial and extractive attitude. So Augustus Smith, I think that's his name, created this garden in the 1800s, and it's full of plants from all over the world. And so there's like a sort of New Zealand section, there's a South African section, and as you walk around the gardens, it's very interesting, and it's so beautiful, it's really stunning, but it's also, you cannot place yourself geographically anywhere because you're seeing plants and trees and bushes and everything from all over the world. And it's a really stunning place to go. But you might be wondering why I went there. So in the middle of the gardens, there is a museum of items from shipwrecks, which I found really interesting. So it's called the Valhalla Collection. And Augustus Smith, again, I might have to double check that name, Augustus Smith set up a museum of objects which had come from ships that had wrecked around the Isles of Scilly and around Cornwall. And I found this really interesting. They're all from the 1800s, and I think what attracted me to them was this sense of they're kind of relics of failure, relics of disaster in a lot of ways, but also wrecking was quite an essential part of the local economy on the Isles of Scilly, because people lived in poverty, and when you had ships that were wrecking on quite a regular basis around the islands, those objects from those ships could then be repurposed and used on the islands, or smuggled or sold on the black market. You know, it was kind of a important part of the local economy to have ships wrecking off the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall. So I thought that was interesting. Even the timber from the ships was used to make buildings on Tresco and I think St Mary's as well. So the fact that shipwrecks, we often think of disaster as being a sort of end point, but I was thinking more about it as being something more circular, or that maybe it's more of a change and that it can lead to new possibilities. I was particularly attracted to the figureheads which I saw in this museum. So he built this sort of strange grotto in the middle of the gardens, and it's made of sort of pebbles and shells, and it's quite an amazing structure in itself. But then you have these figureheads, and going back to my severed heads with the moving jaws, I had this idea that I really wanted to animate them, to perform something together. So this is a photo from a book that I've got downstairs, and this just shows you how many figureheads there were and the variety of different characters that are in this museum. So there's men, women, mythical creatures, animals. There's a real variety, and I think that for me it just seemed like a ready-made set for some sort of performance, and I could imagine them singing or performing something together collectively, which would speak about maybe absurdity or futility or disaster. I haven't figured this out yet, but I'm going to take this back to Essex with me and carry on working on it, because I think there's something really rich in this material that I feel very excited by and very connected to. So this is a particularly weird one. So this one has resin that just constantly pours out the corner of one of its eyes as if it's crying, which I found really, really striking. Some of them are quite moving and quite powerful, I think. This gives a sense of the different scales. So some of them are really vast. Some of them are like 2 meters tall. Some of them are only like this sort of big. And there's just such a variety of characters. This one's my favourite. She's called Independenza. She's a bit sinister looking. She has this horrible thing around her neck and her eyes are kind of glazed over. So I need to think about this. I need to think about what I want to say with them, essentially, and to unpick my attraction to these figureheads. And I thought just quickly I'd show you a very, very, very early kind of test, just to see. So this is if their jaws were moving. So this is just like a super quick test that I did downstairs. I mean, they're not saying anything, they're just going blah, 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 blah at the moment. But something like this, I think there's a piece in there that I'm going to definitely try and pull out. But like I say, this is a work in progress. It's going to come back to Essex with me, and I think that there's a lot that can be unpicked with these figureheads that I'm really excited to explore further. So let's just go. I'm going to now go back to the studio. So the studio downstairs it's a unique building. We all know this. It's a very special and unique historic building. It's a bit like doing a residency in a museum sometimes, because it has this legacy of artists that have come here for a long while, and they've been particularly inspired by the famous St Ives light. And I spent a lot of time in the studio, very long hours, thinking about the architecture and the context, and there's a few things that sort of began to emerge from being in this space. I was thinking about artists that have painted through windows. So Wilhelmina Barns-Graham, the trust that supported my residency, she did this painting looking through, I believe this might be Naomi's studio, I'm not sure. So it seemed to be a recurring theme that the St Ives painters would paint a view of the landscape looking through a window. So this was a painting by Wilhelmina Barns-Graham. And then these are some more paintings by the St Ives painters. So we've got Patrick Heron, Ben Nicholson, Christopher Wood, and Winifred Nicholson down here. And it just seemed to be, it was something that I just kept noticing in my research, that they would paint these views through the windows and that they were all drawn to the area because of the famous St Ives lights. And I wouldn't consider myself to be a painter, but I was really intrigued by their attraction to the light and like I say, the historic context. So when I was working on the ghost train, there was a type of paint that I was particularly interested in called UV paint, which some of you might be familiar with. It's essentially glow-in-the-dark paint. And I'd wanted to do something with this paint while I was working on the ghost train, but there wasn't really the right spot for it. So I had this idea that I wanted to make a painting downstairs in the studio that would absorb the light during the day, and then at night it would glow green. So it's really using the light of this environment and this context, but then in a very direct way, sort of using it to have this very physical experience of this thing that would glow in the dark. And at first I thought, oh, it would be so good. It would be so good if I could make my whole studio glow in the dark. And then from the beach, you would see it, and you'd see it from the cliffs, you'd see it from boats, you would just see this like sci-fi glow in the dark studio. And that would be really good to do. But the UV paint wasn't anywhere near bright enough. And I think that there's a surprising amount of ambient light that comes from these flats and from people having bonfires, and also even from St Ives behind the studios as well. There's a surprising amount of light that just would be competing with it. So I did some tests, but very quickly I think the idea was more appealing than what I actually managed to do. So then I thought, I really want to paint in the studio the windows from the St Ives painters that then would be dormant during the day, so you couldn't really see much during the day. And then at night they would slowly emerge like ghosts. And so during the day, my studio looks like this, very bright. And actually the paintings, I don't know if you can see that, you probably can't see it, but the paintings are actually here in this image. So they're very nearly invisible, they're very, very subtle. And quite a few times people have come for studio visits and not been able to see anything at all. And then I know what's to come. And, you know, again, you probably can't see much there, it's super subtle, but they are there. And then at night, it can look like this. This is at dusk, and then sometimes it also looks like this. So it really, depending on the light conditions, it can really vary in intensity. And I was talking to my housemate Alban about this a few weeks back, and he made the really good analogy about, he said that it reminded him of stars, because stars are always there. So even if they're dormant, they're always in the sky. Sorry, even if they're not visible, they're always there in the sky, they're dormant. And they come out at night, and you sort of have to always believe that they're there, even if you can't see them. And I thought that was a very poetic way to look at things. And also to think about grief and bereavement too. So I did this painting on the wall in the studio downstairs, directly onto the wall. Thank you for letting me do that. And then at night they glow. And it's not quite this green, I don't think. I think this is the way that my camera has photographed the windows, because I used a very slow shutter speed. So it's, I think probably, if you wait until 8 o'clock, it would probably look somewhere between this image and this image. But I like them in all the different sort of variations. I think that they're really mysterious and ghostly, I think. And I wrote a few soppy things down about them, which I'm going to share because I'm feeling a bit soppy. Right. So, in a lot of ways, this work is about my relationship to art in general. So art makes the internal visible, and in a way it's a window. So the work is about how art has got me through difficult times. They're like portals to other worlds. Again, art does that. It can be transformative and it can transport people too. Light and dark. I think light and dark has been a really important, it's going to sound super basic, but it's been a really important thing for me to think about over the last year, and what it's meant to be in the dark and what it's meant to be in the light. And I think I felt more calm in the evenings and at night here, which is something that I know people come to St Ives and they're drawn to it for the light and what it's like to work in a studio with such strong daylight. But for me, probably being here at night when it's just you and the sea and you can hear the sea, and I've felt that often those are the moments that have been the most powerful from the residency. Also visibility and invisibility. So the way that we experience art, I think when we experience it in the dark, it's very different to how we experience it in the light, because when you're looking at an artwork in a gallery in the light, you're aware that you could be looked at when you're looking at something, so there's a degree of self-consciousness, whereas in the dark, I think that you have a more private and intimate experience with what you're looking at, which I thought was quite interesting. This is something that I really thought about on the Ghost Train. And I guess there's a connection between this and the Ghost Train too, in that it's a low budget intervention in a space that thinks about architecture, but then, yeah, it has quite a sort of direct impact and effect. And also, I think, just to sort of finish really, it would be just to say that I've really appreciated Cornwall and appreciated St Ives, and I really wanted to do something that worked with the elements in a very direct way. So when you come here, there's something very, we all know this and experience it, there's something very powerful about our connection to the tides and the light and the sand and the direct elements, what it's felt like to be here. So these elemental qualities, the fact that they can feed into the paintings, felt like something I was really, really keen to do and really excited to do. So that's an important thing to think about in relation to this work too. But yeah, I think I might end there. Let me just see if we've got any more slides. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for sitting in a dark room with me.